Hey, welcome back to the Old Gravy Podcast. Today's show is sponsored by Plaza Grande in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. If you want country club living, it's for those 55 and older. If you're not 55, you're going to wish you were. Anyway, it's good to have you back at the Old Gravy Podcast. We're down here in sunny Jupiter, Florida. Back in the old studio up in South Jersey. I heard you're all waiting for a big snowstorm, so that'll give you a little time frame. We're coming off the big Eagles winning the Super Bowl. But we're going to have a great podcast today. Really, really interesting. I have a guest on today. He's going to share his insights on a major problem for the United States that actually originates in Mexico. And we're going to get into the Mexican cartels, and we're going to go way beyond illegal immigration and as bad as dangerous as that's become and how costly it's come for the country. There's a lot of other things that the cartels have created in our country that has created a lot of problems. Quite frankly, over the last 4 years, we've had the Biden administration actually rewarding the cartels with money, political power. One other big problem in this country is the fentanyl, the opioids, the painkillers. We've had 400,000 deaths in the last 4 years. If you think of World War II, we lost 405,000 U.S. soldiers over a four-year period. I'm not saying all 400,000 deaths were caused by fentanyl. I think the statistic is about 67%. Quite frankly, I don't know why we're not losing our minds over this. But Mexico is getting these ingredients, or the Mexican cartels are getting a lot of the ingredients from China. That's another big issue. We've had the human smuggling, 10 to 15 million people in the last 4 years. And with that comes a lot of criminals, people with mental issues. There's been murder, child molestation, child trafficking, women trafficking. We have imported a lot of problems in the last 4 years. It's amazing, the elite media and the elite corporate folks and the politicians tried to censor exactly what what they were getting warned about, and they really didn't want to hear it. From a financial standpoint, the cartels, I think they've earned they're earning close to $13 billion a year, and that's just in the human smuggling. So we've allowed the cartels to get richer. The richer they get, the more powerful they get in their own country, and they get more and more power. The other thing, the cost to America is unbelievable. I mean, you talk about what drug addiction costs us, suicide, healthcare costs, law enforcement costs, prison costs. These cartels are not only killing us, but they're bankrupting us. So my guest today is going to come on. He's going to discuss with me what the strategies will be for the U.S. military to combat these Mexican cartels. And now that Donald Trump is president, has labeled them a terrorist organization, the rules have changed now. There's a new sheriff in town, and with this labeling them as a terrorist organization, it opens up a lot of resources for the government, for law enforcement, and for the U.S. military. So let me introduce my guest. He's one of the good guys, and he has a ton of experience dealing with a lot of bad men. In this case, we'll be talking about how we will deal with the bad hombres south of the border. So I want to welcome Mario Perez. He's a retired Navy SEAL. He was on SEAL Team 6. He's a Master Chief. It's the highest ranking enlisted member of the United States Navy. Mario, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
You know what? I wanted to bring in some expertise on this. People are hearing, that with him, Donald Trump, the president, labeling this a terrorist organization, that's kind of a game changer as far as what the government can do, law enforcement and military. Do you see it that way?
Yes and no. They're a terrorist organization. I think we've known that for a long time. I don't know that we are going to, change our tactical, approach to these guys unless certain thresholds are met. And those thresholds, would likely be, American hostages down there.
Right.
I don't see there may be some financial, and you know, operational things that we can do, domestically as them being labeled a terrorist organization. But I don't know that we're going to act on a whole lot more things than we're already currently doing.
So that's an interesting thing. Or would you say that the military, and then we'll get into special forces because that's obviously your expertise.
Yep.
Do you think they're doing any type of reconnaissance right now for the U.S. government? How the military? It kind of felt like in the last week it was the first time that Trump actually put military guys down on the border.
Yeah. So, we're executing what is known as a FID mission. So it's foreign internal defense.
Right.
So it's nothing new for us. We've if you knew what the FARC was doing down in Colombia, back in the 80s for many, many, many years, same thing, drug issues going on. We had Green Berets and SEALs down there basically training the Colombian military,
right,
enhancing their abilities, giving them, just better weaponry, and using those guys to go and execute missions.
So this, everyone seemed to be getting real excited about, that Trump is now going to use the military to try to, get a hold of try to control the cartels.
Yep.
But this is something that we've experienced before. And in Colombia that you mentioned, there was success down there, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done it, I did it personally in Afghanistan. I did it in Yemen. I did it in Somalia. I did it in other places where, we're going after, terrorist organizations that largely weren't necessarily directly affecting us, but they were affecting our interests, in the region. We're doing that same thing now. And, it's easy to say like, hey, let's just put U.S. forces there because we can do it better than anybody else.
Right.
But, hopefully the tune changes when we lose one of our service members fighting for somebody else. There's all the talk about, we spend a lot of resources defending other people's borders. We don't do anything, for ourselves. Same thing applies if, we spend all of our time and send our men and women forward to go fight somebody else's battle. That should change the second our men and women start coming home, in body bags. It's much better and safer for us, and it's just smarter in general because we're, obviously there's us building relationships with the leadership of those countries,
right?
Whether they're necessarily stable at the moment or not, but these are things that are going on, simultaneously. And say in Somalia, we put together the TFG, the Transitional Federal Government, or something like that. At the same time, we're training, rival clans to go after the.
Someone expressed that it's like we go down and the good snakes might not be that good, but you train them to go get the worst snakes.
Yeah,
is that the concept?
That's always the case. Like the clan or the tribes that we're training. If you leave a void, or a vacancy of power, they're going to be the first to probably jump on. Taking over and filling that void. So it's always a delicate operation. We've seen that, all over. We see it in the Middle East with larger, organizations, and we see it with, smaller tribes and clans.
Have we done anything like this in Mexico yet?
Oh, we've been doing it for a long time.
Oh, we have been. So it goes beyond the DEA and the ATF. And...
no, 100%. No,
okay.
we've been training for a long period of time.
Oh, working with their military.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
it's
now...
just it's a very delicate situation, right? As you mentioned, the current estimates are these guys are bringing in tens of billions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
Right, and you're talking military and local law enforcement that are making tens or hundreds of dollars a month. These guys have the ability to buy influence at all levels. So yeah, we're providing training and stability, but at the same time, you really don't know who you can trust in these places. So it's always very delicate for us to be involved.
Yeah, I actually think Mexico, and believe me, and that's why I have you on the show, I actually think it's even dicier than what we've traditionally gone after.
Yeah.
Because of the trade. They're right on our border. There are a lot of cultural or historical connections
For sure.
with. So, but I think there's a concept out there, and you can explain this to the listeners that they've heard what they're picturing. I think the average American now is picturing is that guys like you, the Navy SEALs, Delta Force, that they're going to be raiding cartel homes and encampments and taking them out. Probably it's not going to look that way, or who knows?
I don't think it would be unilaterally us.
Right.
I think it would be, and it's just because of the personal collateral damage. There's always a concern with collateral damage in any military operation.
That would be huge down. That would be what they would weaponize against the administration.
We would lose massive support.
Yeah.
If we send in guys and we lose guys, when it's a much safer politically and just personally to train and assist host nation to carry out those missions. And if we fail in getting the guy, we'll do it again.
You always got another shot.
Right.
Yeah.
But and if we lose a half a dozen host nation military folks, we're not losing anything politically. We're probably gaining politically,
right? Because
we can sell the fact that, hey, we are doing something about it. Tragic for the Mexican military and law enforcement, but it's really their fight that we should be supporting, not our fight to take over. Even though, yes, it does obviously direct us directly. All that really does is say that we have to have a heavy hand in what goes on there. We can't just ignore it like we can ignore inner rival things that are going on in Somalia or Yemen or whatever. Can't ignore it when it's right on our border.
And I think here's another challenge. I think in the last 4 years, and I had the number in my head, they've killed 190 something politicians in Mexico. So if the drug trade doesn't slow down, it looks like the immigration is. Obviously, that's dropping like a weight, an anvil going into the ground.
Yeah.
But if the cartels start losing their illegal immigration, their trafficking money, which is huge, we said 13 billion. If they start picking it up in the drug trade, if you're a politician in Mexico, and you want to now get our operators down there, it seems like they've gotten more violent and with all this money, they've gotten more political control.
Yeah.
So what I would be worried about is does it get to the point where we kind of work with the Mexican government and their military to do it? Because this is Trump. Trump always shoots for that Norman Vincent Peale attitude he has, that you shoot for the stars, the inspirational speaker. And if you come down a little bit, if you come down lower, at least you set the goal real high.
That's a standard negotiating tactic called anchoring.
Yeah, anchoring it. He's really good at that. But I'm wondering after the 4 years, because Trump's been left a mess, as we both know, is to get that political cooperation. Like, could there be more moving the Mexican government out and doing less coordination with them? And so, you know how when you go to fix the problem, they're only getting in our way?
Yeah.
Could you see that happening?
I think what we're seeing right now with Trump, there's two unique things about him that we haven't experienced with certainly any president in my lifetime, is his ability to leverage political or economic pressure to make people move. And obviously we share a huge economic trade with the Mexican people and the government. So we're seeing that now, right? We're going to put tariffs on you, and obviously they can do the same thing on us, but it's gonna make them suffer more than we will suffer. We could suffer temporarily, but we can handle the suffering. We don't want it, but we can handle it.
Yeah,
we
can absorb it.
We can absorb it.
Yeah,
it's not gonna give Trump any political points, but in the short term, it may be necessary. In the long term, Mexico couldn't sustain that, so they would come to the table. Obviously, they're in a very tough bind because they are their physical existence is always at risk.
Yeah,
much more than their families and obviously the cartels. They're very dirty operators. But the other thing that we know about Trump is he does not want to put U.S. service members lives
Right.
at risk.
Yeah.
So we will, I think, as long as he is around, we're going to be very hesitant to actually use physical people in Mexico. On our border, that's one thing,
Right.
you know. And if they attack us, I think we would, you know, we would respond without hesitation. But
Right.
it wouldn't be it wouldn't be invading. You know, there may be some cross-border things
And maybe stuff we don't even hear about.
for sure.
Yeah.
I think we would see what we just saw with the Houthis in Yemen.
Yeah.
Right. We bombed them like
Right.
quickly. Like we can touch you, and we will.
Yeah.
We've been doing that in Somalia and a lot of other places around the world. I don't see us invading with any sort of even semi-permanent presence. It could be, you know, quickly to go in and you know, execute somebody that's, you know, done bad things or attacking, you know,
And that's a pretty big deal if a special operators are in Mexico, and and believe me, I wouldn't know. Maybe it's happened already, but that would be a big change if special operators drop somewhere into the desert in Mexico and go into a compound and take out the cartel and three of his biggest henchmen to make or droning them.
Yeah.
Is that something? You think that's on the table right now? Or probably not.
It would be on the table. Not people going in unless it was a hostage situation.
Right.
I don't see us putting boots on the ground to
Right.
go take out why? I mean, you know,
It's too much
because
risk.
well, there's too much risk, but there's 12 other potential leaders right behind them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
we're not shutting down the operation because we kill the leader. We might slow it down for like 30 seconds, but they've already got these, you know, things in place where, you know, if so and so is out, you know, one of his you know, lieutenants is going to take over right away. So
what I'm taking from you, this is still going to be a very sophisticated, under the, you know, below the radar. I think a lot of people in Congress on the left and even the new president of Mexico, she seems to be. What I'm saying is it's probably going to be a sophisticated operation. Even what the president of Mexico says and what the president of the United States, it's not going to be this open warfare down there of taking out all the cartels. This would be kind of a more sophisticated, probably working on relationships that have been established over the years to to crush these guys in different ways. Financially would be a huge one too.
I think, you know, and I think Trump is really good at this, better than most people, is you know, and this is part of just what he does as a negotiator, understanding leverage. You know, you've got to understand what power you have over them. You also have to understand what their interests are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm going to negotiate with you, I'm not going to offer you something that you could care less about. So,
Right.
you know, we've got to understand what their needs are, what her interests are for her people, what you know, what her concerns are. Like, you know, we know that guns go down there. Is that a huge problem? I don't really know about it. You know, we knew about the thing that happened under Obama, you know, and I don't really know. I don't know that much about it, but I know that was an issue. But like,
they were running supposedly, just to refresh. It was Eric Holder actually led it. That they were running military style weapons into Mexico.
Yeah.
To then use them to track the cartels or something.
Yeah.
And then they ended up, one of the firearms were found killing, I think, a DEA agent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, apparently, you know, high powerful weapons being smuggled down there is a problem. That's not something you ever hear about in America.
Right.
So when we start applying pressure to them, well, let's hear about what your concerns are. And those are, you know, obviously if you know, we were going to hold them accountable to keep the people on your side and keep the drugs on your side, we should also, you know, take the responsibility to try to keep the weapons on our side.
Well, you know what? And there probably are, I don't know if they're military grade weapons, but there probably are weapons that go from the United States down into Mexico. And it's one of the reasons that you can't have an open border.
Yeah.
And with Trump's efforts right now, shutting that border down, putting the military on the border, there's a good chance if there were that many weapons coming through the border, because they beat us over the head with that.
Yeah.
You know, that it's your fault because it's all your weapons that the cartels are using. But by Biden leaving that border open, I would probably agree. A lot more weapons probably went down there than they should.
Yeah.
So this whole action of shutting down the border would be very important. And I would think that from like the weapons globally or whatever,
Yeah,
there's a lot of ports
for sure.
in Mexico. They could be coming from anywhere.
For sure.
Right?
Of course. Yeah,
If
of
you
course.
want them, if you're a cartel,
Of course.
like where else in the world would you buy weapons from? Like,
I mean, you can always get them from China and Russia. I mean, you
Yeah.
can always get, cheaply made stuff. And, certainly if you're dealing with the governments, they don't have the resources that we do
right.
to buy stuff. So they're going to get cheap China made, but still effective.
Yeah. So
not as accurate, but you just throw more lead down range and
But in
you'll be right.
but in a debate, it would be that it's all America's fault. It's like, listen, Mexico's a big country with a lot of big ports. There's a lot of bad countries who would love to sell them weapons.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
No, I would because what you just said about the weapons coming in from it, that's been that's some of the pushback, when everyone before an action's going to start, that's some of the pushback that I've been hearing, like, well, it's America's fault. I'm going to take a real quick commercial break and tell you about Plaza Grande. Have you been dreaming of a maintenance-free country club lifestyle in a stunning residence? Look no further than the Plaza Grande in Cherry Hill. That's the old race track, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Imagine living in a place where you can enjoy luxury community amenities where everything is just minutes away. Restaurants, retail shopping, groceries are all at your fingertips. And that's not all. They have pristine swimming pools. Take a stroll to the nearby stores. Tons of activities, pools, movies, mahjong, bingo, you name it, they have it. So go to PlazaGrandeCherryHill.com. That's PlazaGrandeCherryHill.com. And we're going to be right back with Mario Perez, United States Navy SEAL. And we're going to be talking about the cartels and how we're going to deal with this with Trump now labeling them a terrorist organization. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Old Gravy Podcast. I'm with Mario Perez. Mario, you're a retired Navy SEAL. Are you ever really a retired Navy SEAL?
No, not really.
Who says that? The Marines always say that or something?
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Once a Marine.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know what the if SEALs, once a SEAL, always a SEAL. I didn't know how you guys manage that. So anyway, Mario and I were just going over the Mexican cartels, and he has a good handle on with Trump labeling them a terrorist organization and now potentially using the military. But I think, as you just heard, it's going to be a little more sophisticated than running down into Mexico and killing all the bad guys. I want my listeners to get a little bit of a background on you. We were out to dinner the first time I met you,
Yep.
and we were, I had knew you were a Navy SEAL. We had never met before, and we start talking. You start talking about your son's high school wrestling, and so wrestlers, anyone with kids that are wrestling or any wrestlers, I want you to really hone in on this. This is good stuff. So I said I'm looking at Mario, and he's telling me that he's going to some wrestling tournaments. His son's a high school wrestler. And while I'm looking at him, I'm like, this guy looks like a wrestler. He looks like a wrestler. We're talking about wrestler, and I have like an epiphany. I say, wrestlers probably make good Navy SEALs. So I say to you, as this thought is going through my head, like it's the first 30 seconds that me and you were talking in this restaurant.
Yeah.
And we're out with our wives. And I said, are a lot of wrestlers, and I said, are you a wrestler? And you said, yeah, I was a high school wrestler. And you actually said you thought about wrestling collegiately, but you always wanted to go in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what the opportunity was to wrestle, you were determined to get into the Navy after high school.
Yeah, I knew since I was 10 years old. I had an older brother that signed up when I was in probably middle school. And he was, looking at the SEALs. He ended up becoming a diver, and I'm like, yeah, that's
your calling.
That's where I want to go. I didn't like school, I didn't love it. But yeah, I knew I wanted to go to the Navy.
No, that's really cool. That at that age you were determined. Now, getting back to the wrestling thing, your son's a wrestler. You were a wrestler. Then I'm thinking like, man, wrestlers probably make good SEALs. I asked you the question: do wrestlers make good SEALs? And you said.
Yeah, so by and large, that is the greatest attribute that contributes to guys actually graduating SEAL training. 40% of SEALs have a wrestling background.
I thought that was so interesting. It's always more interesting when you're confirming something you thought about. So when you said it, I was like, wow, I had a weird feeling, because wrestling, there's that toughness, there's that focus. It's really a thinking man's sport too. When you're out on that mat one-on-one, you know better than anybody. So I am not surprised. Then the second question, I got a lot of football players who are listeners here too, and wrestlers, by the way. The football players don't work out too well when they go to the Navy SEALs. Is that true?
I don't know what the statistics are, but the top 3 contributing sports, or just demographics in general, is wrestling at 40%, water polo at 15%, and swimming at 10%. Obviously, it's an aquatic, profession. So the people who are comfortable in the water are going to be.
But they're very so. It's swimming, wrestling, and what was the other one?
Water polo.
Water polo.
It's essentially swimming while getting punched in the face. I've done it a few times. I did not like it at all.
Right.
It's not. You've got to be obviously very competent in the water, and so you're at risk of drowning if you're not, and then somebody's punching you in the face at the same time. So
you know what? I don't know why, and I can't pinpoint it, but I get why the football players are. I think it's a different mindset, and it's a different focus. First of all, you got 10 other guys on the field to help you.
Yeah.
But I mean, the SEALs have that too. Obviously, you're out there with the team.
Yeah.
But that individualism, I totally get it. It's interesting. And when you said you wanted to go in the Navy, but before we get into that, so give me a little bit of your background. You grew up in Miami.
Yeah, I grew up in the Fort Lauderdale area.
Yeah. How many siblings?
8. There's 8 of us total. There's 10. I've got 4 step and 2 half.
Okay.
But we grew up with 8.
Now you said something, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I only heard it once, but I don't think you said you lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with no air conditioning in South Florida.
It was a house, 2-bedroom, 1-bath.
2-bedroom, 1 house. Okay, not
no
apartment, no air conditioning.
Yeah,
that could make you a Navy SEAL.
I mean, it can make you want to get out of Florida. It can make you want to get to wherever there's healthcare and clothes and a bed for free.
That what I always thought. We didn't have a shower in my house till I was a sophomore.
Wow.
But we had a bathtub. But no, listen, you taught me. No air conditioning in South Florida. That's a whole other thing.
The house was from the 60s, and it was very common.
Yeah.
The houses are built out of concrete, flat roofs, small windows. Now every house has got giant windows, and it's just letting a lot of light in.
Right.
We grew up with the doors wide open with fans in every room, and you dealt with it. If that's what you're born into, you don't know any different.
Yeah.
Funny enough is I actually thought we were middle class growing up. I'm like we're pretty good. I didn't. Now I would be crying my butt off, if I had to be put in that situation. No way, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I we grew up middle class, and I was never that impressed with the other. I always thought, wow, things are great here.
Yeah,
we had we had fans. We didn't have central air, and if it was really hot, we could sleep on my parents' floor because there was one air conditioner in the house in their bedroom. So if it was real hot, you'd go in there. But becoming a Navy SEAL, there's how many Navy SEALs throughout the country? Over 2,000?
There's probably about that. I don't really know.
So, but that the amount of people, and I mean, obviously, what the SEALs have done, and they've become, legendary now. I mean, in pop culture, that guy's, they'll refer to someone if they do something unbelievable. Like, what are you, a Navy SEAL? Or, but getting there, getting there is like getting to the NFL or getting to the NBA. I mean, that's you have to have a real desire to do it.
Not a lot of people, graduate buds. I mean, usually, if 150 start, you may have a dozen graduate, at least with their original class.
Right.
Some, another 20 or 30 may roll back and graduate with another class. But I actually started as EOD. So disarming bombs. So
Yeah.
I went through EOD school, which is about a year and a half long, starting off with 4 months, dive school, and then around a year or so of learning how to disarm everything from landmines to booby traps to hostage devices to chemical weapons, nuclear weapons, biological weapons. So rather lengthy school, and then did a couple tours at regular EOD units, and then I screened for SEAL Team 6 right well in 2000 or early 2001. I don't really remember.
So your specialty was like ordinances and
Correct.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
So
it's funny because I read what a SEAL team they had, and there were like 8 or 9 different things that each SEAL team on a mission had. I don't.
Yep.
It was 8 or 9 guys. I don't even know the exact number.
I mean, every mission's going to be unique, but
unique, but they had categories for guys. There was a breacher, there was an ordnance guy, there was a driver. Is that like that's more of like a standard?
There's going to be core skills that everybody has, and then individuals will specialize in a few things. Your EOD guys are going to be your EOD guys. Your medics are going to be primarily your medics.
Right.
There are SEAL medics. But then, you'll have guys that specialize in diving, specialize in jumping, specialize in breaching, specialize in different specialties. Everybody has a fundamental, basic level, but there's always advances in technology. There's always obviously additional legwork in each one of those. So like your skydivers, you guys that specialize in skydiving, they're always going to be, seeking out the latest and greatest tactics, the latest and greatest techniques. When you are preparing for a deployment, you're going to be doing workups. You're going to be doing skydiving is going to be part of that. So these are going to be your guys that get all the higher end qualifications to, your jump masters, which I had a static line and free fall jump master, qualification. So I would be leading some of those trips or training events,
right.
While the other guys who are basically just jump qualified, I would be leading and running those events. And then if we were going to do a dive trip, the guys that specialize in diving would be leading and running those events.
So if you're on a mission, you might not be the lead skydiver guy, but you got to skydive.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are basic qualifications that everybody has to have, but you may not be the guy in charge.
Yeah, that's so when you get to that guy's expertise, you defer.
Correct. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into the planning and the preparation. You're coordinating with pilots, you're planning your routes and your altitudes and all the different types of things that are involved in that. So your regular guy on the team that's not specializing in that wouldn't be in charge of that. They're just doing what they're told.
And your expertise was dealing with bombs, ordinances.
Correct.
And is it like, I always think of the movie Hurt Locker.
Yeah.
Did you see that movie?
I saw like 30 minutes of it and then I turned it off.
You know what?
Annoying.
That's why I wanted you to ask you that question. Because when you live it for real, the movie's gonna.
Well, the kind of the core mission that EOD operators have is to protect life.
Yeah.
And then maybe property.
Right.
But you don't risk property for life. And there's categories, and like a Cat A situation would be, there's a hostage, with a device on them inside of a building. Right. That's when you will risk your life.
Right.
You're not going to send a robot in when you've got a terrorist holding a gun to a hostage that's got a bomb strapped to him, right? So he'd probably just shoot the robot. But either way, I watched a little bit of it, and I just saw like early parts of it. Just them. Obviously, there's some dramatization that goes on, which is why I really don't watch military movies. But them sending life out for a bomb that's in the middle of the road.
Right.
In a foreign country.
Yeah.
And it's a dirt road. Yeah. And if the bomb goes off, you're going to have a hole of dirt that you can fill back in about 3 minutes by giving the locals some shovels and $2.
Right.
You're not sending an American bomb technician who has spent, a year or so. Our Army goes through less training because they don't do the water-based stuff. Like, yeah, you don't. So none of it just made sense to
No,
me.
I
And
get it.
obviously, that's how it is.
That's how it is.
If there's a movie on any specialty, like I'm not
I'll give
watching
you a
it.
perfect example. The movie The Departed, right?
Yeah.
So it was Jack Nicholson's playing Whitey Bulger, and then there's another mobster from Boston whose name's Jimmy Boyle. Say.
Okay.
So in the movie, after the movie, someone got one of the gangsters from Whitey, a Boston mobster who knew all the real characters,
Yeah.
and they asked him, "What'd you think of the movie?" And he goes, "It was a movie."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, how much was it in reality to the Irish mob in Boston?" And you could tell, and they got the microphone, and he goes, "Not really. I'm telling you, it was a movie. I watched it as a movie." And they go, "Well, why? You're kind of acting like it really didn't capture Whitey Bulger and Jimmy Boyle." And he goes, "Well, all right. You want an example? I'll tell you. Jimmy Boyle and Whitey Bulger are a scene in the movie, which is Jack Nicholson and some other. Jack Nicholson, as Whitey Bulger is saying to him, I am going to like rip your lungs out and throw you in the river and stomp on your head." And the guy said, Whitey Bulger would have never said that to Jimmy Boyle. They were both sociopaths.
Yeah.
You would never, one sociopath ain't going to tell the other sociopath what he's going to do to him because they'll just end up killing each other.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't work that way. Like that stuck out at me. And when you were telling me the story about how you watched it for about 30 minutes and you had enough, I thought about, the same thing. He lived amongst those mobsters. They didn't threaten each other like that. That would be your quickest wave to a grave. One thing I liked, I looked up your LinkedIn. And now that you've explained the ordinances and that was your specialty, you have rocket surgeon on there.
Yeah.
So, and when I think of rocket surgeon, obviously that's like, when you do watch the movies, that's the red wire, the blue wire.
Yeah.
But you must have that engineering mind.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the mechanical aptitudes is required to be an EOD operator.
Right.
Like people know what the ASVAB test is, the Armed Service Vocational Aptitude Battery. So it's not like, like an SAT, you're getting tested in 3 things, and ACT like 2, but this tests you in like, I don't know, like maybe a dozen or so different things.
Right.
And when you're trying out for, certain professions in the military, they pick apart certain aptitudes that you have to excel in. They don't care about, they do care about the overall score, but you have to have strong aptitude scores in a certain things, and mechanical is one of those. But the whole term rocket surgeon is obviously a play on 2 things, rocket scientist and brain surgeon, who are generally people who are relatively smart. Which is, it's obviously that is definitely something that's required with EOD. But the difference between the 2 is, rocket scientists is theoretical, and it's,
right.
You're in computers and you're designing things and all that. And then brain surgery is, you are actively working on a patient.
Yes.
But if things go south,
it's big problem.
The patient's dying. Doctor's going home, and he's still getting a big paycheck. For us, you're doing, very detailed, very sensitive things, and if it goes south, it's you for sure, and potentially dozens, hundreds, thousands of
that are around you.
Yeah.
I really, when I read that and we had a conversation, I'm like, wow, okay, I get the rocket surgeon. That's very, very that's a good descriptive. If you didn't become a Navy SEAL, and with that, obviously you have that type of brain, what do you think you would have done? Or what would you have liked to, because you hit the top of whatever you could be in the
as
military.
a kid, I always liked the engineering type of stuff. So I probably would have been like an architect or some sort of engineer, but it was just never, I was never a thrill seeker, but I think I just always wanted to push myself physically and mentally.
Right.
And those career choices, there's no, physical pushing, you know what I mean? It's all mental.
Right. So you got a combination of both.
That's really what I loved about being an EOD operator, certainly in the Navy, is because you have all of the tactical skill sets that the SEAL community has, but then you also have the extreme, mental challenges that just come with the job. It's common that certainly within the Navy, the SEALs are known as the most difficult physical group.
Yeah.
And then we have our nukes, so our nuclear power guys, the guys that they're all wicked smart mathematicians. Spent a year and a half or 2 years or so going through nuclear power school, but then they run the aircraft carriers and the submarines, the nuclear power stuff. But that school is known as the toughest academic school in the military. EOD claims number 2 on both of them, or as some of my SEAL friends have said, not strong enough to be a SEAL, not smart enough to be a nuke. Hey Mario, what's the definition of an EOD guy? I'm like, I don't know, Jimmy.
That's good. Did you ever shoot for that kind of nuclear thing, or
no? Heck no.
I
was always gifted at math, but I didn't love math.
Right.
You have to love it. I was not passionate about it. It just came easy. But once it became, a lot of work, I'm like, I'm good. I don't need to do 15 pages of math.
I saw in your LinkedIn too, problem solver, and basically how you're describing, what your skill set is.
Yeah, I mean that is like the core of certainly an EOD operator, and any SEAL, Green Berets. I mean, your problems are different, but certainly as an EOD operator at SEAL Team 6, you've got a large, list of problems that you've got to work through that are very difficult and unique.
So let's get into because everyone talks about SEAL training. So BUDS. That's and what does that stand for?
Basic Underwater Demolition SEALs.
Okay, and that is the kind of the umbrella of the training that you go in. Tell us about that. How long does it last?
It is 6 months long out in Coronado.
Yep.
It's got 3 phases. The first phase is just kind of a beat down phase, and that's where Hell Week is. I think it's still probably week 6.
Right.
After that, it's dive phase for 2 months, where you basically learn scuba and Draeger.
Right.
Draeger is the mixed gas rebreather, pure oxygen. You're good to 20 feet with excursions to 50. But you're learning the equipment. You're learning more water competency, and then some of the tactical stuff that you do with each of those equipment. And then the third is land phase, where you're basically out at San Clemente Island, and you're learning all land tactics, land navigation, weapons, immediate action drills, patrolling, things like that. So I didn't go through that. I went through what's known as Green Team. So
because you got pulled from the other
when SEAL Team 6 was stood up,
right?
They quickly realized they needed guys who were weapons experts, because
right.
They're going to go take down, say, Iran, smuggling weapons to Houthis, and they needed people that could understand those. So they started sending guys to EOD school, but they had a hard time getting guys through it. For a variety of reasons. A, it's a completely different skill set.
Yeah, you might not have
but
that aptitude.
B, that you may or may not, but you also
right.
may not really have the desire, because it's not an easy school. Again,
right.
It's second physically demanding, but it's also the second, mentally, academically challenging. But you're also talking to guys who are at the highest level of their profession and lives as a SEAL Team 6 operator, and then you're saying you're going to go back and start over at some school that is like not really going to be, it's not going to be enhancing you as a SEAL.
Right.
You're going to be basically an addition. So they started bringing in EOD operators who already had all the EOD stuff and trying to teach them SEAL tactics and weapons and things like that. So when I showed up, I went through what's known as Green Team, and it's one class a year.
Right.
You join all the other SEALs that are coming out of 5 to 7 years as an operator at a SEAL team. I'm coming from 4 or 5 years as an operator, an EOD operator, and you join up and you go through, and there you're learning all of the advanced SEAL tactics. Right. So I didn't do the basic stuff that
right.
really makes you a SEAL. I did all the advanced stuff that makes you essentially a SEAL Team 6 operator.
And when you're with your SEAL team, and we're going to get into some of the technical, how they break, what's SEAL Team 4, 6, and how, because I want to get into that with you too. What is the training requirement when you're now a SEAL? You're with a unit. What is I don't know if anyone ever asked SEALs this. What's like when you're on base or living your day-to-day 9 to 5, I don't know how that
Yep.
all works. How do you guys train in those circumstances?
So it just kind of depends on where you work. SEAL Team 6 is unique. It is a national mission force that deploys globally. Was designed to deploy for purpose, not for presence. There's two kinds of basic deployments that military people do: deploying for purpose and deploying for presence. All of the other SEAL teams deploy for presence, meaning they're on a rotational cycle to a fixed geographical region in the world. So they're going to go to, you know, say CENTCOM, so East Africa and
Right.
Southwest Asia, and they will be, maybe for 6 months or however the deployment length is, they will be the SEAL team that is available for the geographical combatant commander to operate in that region.
And do they become specialists in that area from a
Correct.
language standpoint?
Yeah, so each one of the teams is assigned to a geographical
Right.
region. So like say SEAL Team 4 is South and Central America. So
Right.
they're not going to be doing Arctic warfare. They may do a little bit of it just to
Right.
be familiar, but they're going to be living in jungles and mountains.
Right. So they
Right.
so they
And
focus
rivers.
their training around that type of environment.
Correct. And then
do they speak Spanish usually?
Of course. So
Yeah.
so their language abilities are going to be focused on what they would be using in that region.
Did you have any because you're SEAL Team 6, where you really had the globe, right?
Correct.
Because you're doing hostages and
Yeah.
you could rattle off what are some of the SEAL Team 6 specialties? That missions, like what do they go on?
Well, so I mean, their legacy mission is really taking over a cruise ship that's been hijacked.
Right. Okay.
Whereas Delta's is taking back an airplane that's been hijacked.
Wow.
So we spend a lot of time,
That's
in
interesting.
very complex CQB operations.
It makes
Close
sense.
quarters.
The Army goes. What did you say? If what type of situation for Delta would be
An airplane.
an airplane?
Yeah.
Because it's on a tarmac somewhere.
Yeah.
And a cruise ship, I think of the Achille Lauro or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know if you guys, like, that was a historical thing many years ago.
Yeah.
And then did the SEALs do the Tom Hanks? Unfortunately, I got to refer to a movie.
Yeah.
The Tom Hanks movie.
Yeah.
Off the coast with the African pirates.
Captain Phillips.
Yeah.
That was SEAL
Phillips.
Team 6.
That was
Yeah, that's not
right.
That's not a secret, but
Right.
yeah, that's SEAL Team 6.
Yeah, that's okay. So how many SEAL teams are there?
I don't really know. Maybe 4 on each coast.
4, okay.
I think, and there's. I
And
don't
they
know
use
if there's
odd
still...
and even numbers or something, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of normal for most groups, just to understand it. But you've got West Coast SEAL teams that are 1, 3, 5, 7.
yes, yeah,
East Coast 2, 4, 8, and 10. And then 6 is in the middle, and that's just a unique, because when it was started, there was only 2. There was 1 and 2.
right,
And then when Delta had a botched rescue operation in Iran,
yeah,
we decided to stand up JSOC, and then shortly after that, SEAL Team 6 stood up. And the naming of the team, I think, was, what I've been told, was to just throw Russia off on the number of teams that we had. But yeah, so SEAL Team 6, it operates globally. So there's obviously a lot of things that have happened out there, and bad guys that have been killed or whatever. We don't really specialize in languages per se. And I can
Right.
tell you the same thing I told Dana Perino when George Bush came to visit on his way out. How many languages do you speak? And,
Yeah.
Basically said, yeah, we don't really go there to talk,
right. That makes sense.
And I mean, it's true. We're not
Yeah.
going in and, again, a FID mission, right?
Yeah, you're not nation building.
Right. We're not nation building. We're
Yeah.
going there for precision.
Yeah, to get a
thing.
job done and get out.
Yeah. Take somebody out, capture somebody, rescue somebody, and then you're out. There's not a lot of talking going on. And obviously we have used interpreters for certain things. And it became more common post 9/11 because then we were really deploying for presence. Sorry. And we had more sustained, operations on the ground where interpreters became kind of necessary.
Where were some of the places you've been deployed?
Mostly to Afghanistan, and then to Iraq and Somalia, Yemen, few other.
Which one did you like the best, and which one did you like the least?
I mean, they were all unique. And I tried to make the most of every place. I really loved Iraq for the just the number of like tactical operations that we were able to do. Like we were going out every single night.
So the work
The
was
work was it
engaging.
was a very heavy load, and
Yeah,
I just liked it.
yeah,
And coming from a half a dozen deployments in Afghanistan, where things were much more difficult to operate just because of the geographical terrain. And then shortly after, my first couple deployments there, Iraq kicked off. And then there was the, counterinsurgency. So all of our assets from Afghanistan and, obviously bin Laden went into hiding and we weren't getting any real significant, you know, intel on where he was. And everything pointed to Pakistan and we weren't going to invade Pakistan. Um, it just became really like not exciting to
right,
be there. But culturally it was cool.
right,
But honestly, my favorite was actually Yemen. I really liked being in Yemen. Not as exciting per se, as the operations were in Afghanistan or Iraq, but much smaller footprint for us. So we had a lot more freedom of movement.
right.
Um, I love culture and
Yeah,
Sana'a was where I operated most out of. It was founded by one of Noah's sons, and the Bab el Yemen is a walled in city. It means the gates of Yemen. Um, is still there. It's like over 3,000 years old. And like,
it's fascinating.
it's fascinating.
You,
Just the history and the culture that's there.
you know what I like? People think, as a military Navy SEAL, you're a warrior that like, you're on edge 24/7. But I'm sure there's like, you live a whole, you do your job and then you have time to kind of just either hanging out with guys or military personnel who are your friends or whatever. So I guess what I'm trying to ask for the listeners, like, not every day is like you're out on the wrestling mat and you're under. Well, I don't know. Are you under
Well,
duress all the time?
It kind of depends on,
Where you're at, I guess.
most of my work was post 9/11.
Yeah.
And yes, we were very busy and there was no really downtime.
Right.
After 9/11, I averaged about 10 months a year away from home.
Wow.
So either deployed in combat or, home for 5 days, say hello to the wife and kids, and then you've got to be training for the next phase of things. So there was not really a lot of downtime.
Do you ever run out of adrenaline?
I'm out of it now. I'm smoked. I'm done. Yeah, it's all spent.
Right. No, I just thought about that. Like when you just said no, we were really busy, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's like that adrenaline rush that gets you through. I mean, get you through a podcast, but
Yeah.
but obviously, or a football game or a wrestling match. But that level of adrenaline that you would run on.
No, I mean, I don't think any of us have any issues, having the adrenaline there when it's needed for years and years at a time. But
Right.
certainly, I've noticed a significant drop since I left.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's weird. It was explained to me. I spent a month in Bethesda, as I was working on getting out, and they explained to me the your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous
Yeah.
system. You're familiar with
Yep.
those?
Yeah.
So your fight or flight,
Fight or flight.
and
Yep.
that's when there's immediate danger,
Yeah.
and your body reacts a certain way. Heart rate and moisture and vision and everything that's going on with your body. But as soon as the threat is gone, your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and it basically shuts down the fight or flight, in you, so that you can get back to homeostasis and just be chill. So it was explained to me because there's just we see a lot of common issues with operators, and there's was something that's coined operator syndrome, which I don't know much about, but when I read up about it, it's certainly something I can relate to. But the doctors explain that your parasympathetic, you're living on the edge for so long, you're living in the fight or flight mode so long that your parasympathetic nervous system basically shut down and doesn't know how to work anymore. So, when you see movies about guys that are like, just on edge all the time,
Right.
it's not made up. It's like they're
It's
a part
real.
of our brains that just don't know how to work anymore. And it's something that, everyone constantly deals with as they're working their way out, especially, especially having lived certainly post 9/11,
So
where
then, so then the mission is to bring that back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
try to get back to normal, some
Right.
sense of normal, which
Right.
is not, it's not easy.
No. So I want to thank Mario Perez for coming in today, retired Navy SEAL, Master Chief. Once again, that's the highest ranking enlisted member of the United States Navy. We learned a lot. I learned a lot today from Mario about the Navy SEALs and his career. And really good show, Mario. Thanks for coming in. I really appreciate
I
it.
appreciate you having me, Tom.
Thank
Of
you.
course.
Disclaimer. The host assumes no responsibility or liability for any errors or omissions in the content of this podcast. The information contained in this podcast is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.